Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for joining today. We are back on the Piney Woods and Pacific, and we are laying the line north to Cornett. This is the next to last of the two towns that I need to finish connecting. The only other town left after this one is Avenger. But this episode, we're not going to actually build the town out. We'll save that for the next episode on the Piney Woods and Pacific. Once we finish building the town out, we'll run the train up there, but this is just going to be us detailing the line, and one of the cool things you'll see in this video is how you can get actually a lot more detail than you might expect without actually really having to do too much. So the whole point of this video was to just kind of show how I do the scenery between points of interest. I don't do it anywhere near the level of detail that I'm putting into the Coxswain sub, and that's for a couple of reasons. But you know, that's everything I work on. I have a broader purpose, and I make different compromises for different routes for different reasons. But this route, I wanted to be able to push it out a lot more quickly. I wanted to be able to enjoy it, but also make it a little bit easier on computers and processors and all that stuff. So we're deliberately not putting the most detail in here, but we're still putting enough to make everything look nice and believable. Cornett is a very small unincorporated community that never actually had any rail service, but that's a nice thing about 3-foot logging railroads in Texas. There were so many of them that you know, you can use real places that never had it, and you could say that they had it, and no one's really ever going to care or know, because so many places did have little 3-foot lines at different points in time. So, and there were several 3-foot lines up in this area of Cass County, but I'm not necessarily modeling any sort of prototype. Completely made this up from scratch, connecting towns that for the most part never actually had any rail service. But one of the big compromises I make on this route is just doing enough scenery to more or less sort of block the view to the edge. I'm not going way out of my way to hide the edge of the world, but at the same time, the way I drive trains, I'm mostly focusing on looking at the train or riding in cab mode. So, you know, the edge of the world doesn't really stick out as much, but when you're in those views, it doesn't stick out as much. So just keeping it simple, but you can see already just by adding in the trees and a little bit of discoloration in the ground, we are already getting a lot more life in this route than what we would have had before. And that's one of the big things you can do early on. You know, you can always come back and really fine tune certain areas of your scenery. If you want to really help yourself get past the giant green emptiness, then yeah, lay some subroad bed with one color, make a smaller brush near the track and lay that color under the track, and then, you know, get your hills and valleys and creeks and everything, and then place a ton of trees, cut out some fields, just color them, and you can always come back and do all the finer details like fences and animals and houses and all that stuff later. But just getting some of those really basic, easy, fast details can help you to feel like there's a bit more life in your route and keep you interested in getting it finished. So, and then of course there's telegraph wires. So you got to have a telegraph wire. Just another way to communicate. Setting I'd say on this is like, I guess early 1880s, maybe mid 1880s. So, you know, plenty of time before telephones came out, but definitely the heyday of the telegraph. So. But yeah, that's the line. It's not called the Piney Woods for nothing, because it clearly has a lot of piney woods. But there are some old roads here and there that eventually turned into, you know, roads that exist today that we use. And so this is one of those. I'm going to get the crossing laid in here, but just so you know, this line heading to Cornett, it is just a branch of the Cass subdivision. And what it does, it heads up to the town of Cornett. And then, of course, you can run a local to Cornett, because there's a couple of spots where we'll deliver some cars. I think I'm going to have just one, either grain mill or something, where you can load cars. And then the rest of it actually is just interchange traffic, because Cornett is going to be the location of the only 3-foot interchange on the entire railroad. And at some point, I'll release the map, or the planned map, of the entire route. It's pretty broad in scope. This is, you know, not huge, but it's a very small fraction of the overall plan. So we'll see how much I actually end up building. But we'll finish the Cass subdivision, and we'll kind of see what happens and go from there. But yeah, we're going to run a local to Cornett eventually, and then we'll also run the interchange train at some point. So it just takes cars from Sardis up to Cornett to interchange with, what is it? It's the Utica and Naples Railroad. So it's another 3-foot line. And in the time frame of this route, that railroad is actually under construction. And so pretty much the majority of cars that we're going to ship to that railroad are going to be cars loaded with rail, fasteners, ties, equipment, tools, all that kind of stuff. Other supplies for like camp supplies and things for those people who are going to be building that railroad. So I'm not actually going to ever build that railroad, but that's going to be its relationship. And yeah, I've got 2 interchange tracks there in Cornett, so one for dropping off cars and one for picking up cars. And then that'll be it. I don't know if I'll actually run a locomotive for the quote-unquote UNN, but, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Cross that bridge later. But there is a creek here that runs up to Cornett. It is really windy and really small, so here we are laying that out. And then we're going to just get the water laid in. But I do like the idea of the railroad from Cornett with the interchange. I did write down what all we're going to receive from it. It's mostly going to be some raw material-ish type goods because the railroad's under construction, so it's into an area that's not super developed yet. But yeah, that'll be the plan. And if you want to run the local to Cornett someday and you realize that it just doesn't have a lot of cars, but you've got some interchange cars, well, you can just put them on the same train. The grades are only steep at one point. I think it's like maybe 2.5%, which I know for an air gauge is not really that steep. Trust me, I know. But that's only for a short period of time, and it's only at one spot. So when you head south from the main town on this route, which is called Sardis, you can only take about 200 tons. But going up here to Cornett, you could probably pull 300, 350 and get away with it, as long as you had some speed before you hit that hill. But yeah, I did at least kind of map out a route on Google Maps, and I modeled that route. So tried my best to keep to the elevation profile. I did do some measurements and some geometry, some surveying and all that kind of stuff to get kind of a good idea. But then I made approximations after that because I'm not modeling any sort of prototype to the foot. It's just not my thing. But we are going to be done here fairly soon. I know this one's a bit short, but that's because I really just wanted to focus on showing you how much life you can put into a route in just a few minutes. The overall recording time here was about 32 or 33 minutes. So obviously I'll have quite a few things to go back and fill in and do later. But as you can see, in just half an hour, I got like 3 miles of line detailed and got it all set up where it at least has some life and some variation, and it's not just a bland landscape. Although you could argue that the Piney Woods back in the 1880s was probably a bland landscape of endless pine trees. Well, hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next video on this one as we finish up the town of Cornett, and then after that we'll run the local in a separate video. And I've got some more stuff eventually that'll come out on the Cox and Sub, so stay tuned for all those things if you're interested. Thank you guys always, and we'll catch you next time.